thank you for this day and, well, your created majesty and how you care for us in such microscopic ways. Not like you're a perfectionist at all. You just are loving us, and you know who you're loving. You called us, not us, you. And so take this class today. You can get something out of it for each one of us. You can extract something that will turn out to be a blessing through us to others, and I pray you do something like that today, please, in Jesus' name. Amen. So, what I've just passed back to you, if you turned it in on time, you got full credit, even though you might see a score on there that says less than, I think it was 66 points, or 63 points on the scientific case for creation. Everybody that turned it in on time and tried all the problems, you got full credit, even though I may have marked off when the problem wasn't, it didn't meet my expectations. And just to reiterate, so these answers, all of these answers came right out of the book. And that's what I noted, hopefully. I said, answers to these questions must be uncovered in the text itself. So that's what I was looking for you to do. And I happen to have, if you want to, I didn't give this to you, but I can tell you the page and the paragraph that these questions would be found in. Some of you answered what you thought, like if I gave you this question and said, okay, what do you think about this? And you gave me what you thought. Well, I appreciate you're giving me what you thought, but I wanted specifically you to read the article and discern what the article was saying this. So, what ground do both evolution and special creation need to be seen from? Both must be seen with the eyes of faith. Really simple, not too elaborate. And just note, if on these questions you got more than the required, if you got 68 out of 66, well, I gave you the 68 on your grade. But if you got less than that, if you got a 42, I still gave you 63. This is to give you an idea of what I'm doing. So you have at least a little idea about how I'm looking at these things. Now, I may not do all of them the same way, but if I don't, I'll make a note, hopefully, on them to give you some guidance with this thing. So, these would be found in the text itself. Can evolution be proved scientifically? No. Can special creation be proved scientifically? No. Why not? They can't be observed in operation, we can't see them happening, and they can't be tested. There's no way to test whether the Big Bang happened. There's no way to test God spoke. How do you test it? It's a thing, it's a faith thing. That's what both of these things, evolution and special creation. Now this is macroevolution. Microevolution, you can see. It happens today. It's happening outside somewhere. So that can be, you can evaluate that. But evolution itself, macroevolution, one species changing to another, that's never been observed. And special creation, well, we weren't there. We have a record of it, that God did it. And so, but that's what we have. We're believing what somebody else wrote. Now, I think I have a relationship with the Creator, and so I'm confident that it's true. But there are still nuances that I might look at differently. The professor that was here before I came would have been called a theistic evolutionist. We have good fellowship. He knows Jesus real well. He looks at things differently than I do about creation. And that's okay. He knows the blood washes. It doesn't mean that everything's okay. But in some issues, it's still up. There's some things that aren't as conclusive as we'd like them to be. So, chief reason supporting your answers to these no's. If you said no's, you should have. Neither can be observed, nor can they be tested. That's a big deal. You'll see that same question in another form a little bit later in this same thing. What does this article define as the purpose of a model? Well, it gives a definition. It says what it is. Page 14, paragraph 3, it says, to correlate and explain and possibly predict scientific data. You see that, well, in our NOAA weather station. This not too far from here. So they have models. They have computer models, all kinds of them, dealing with the same thing, but different variables. So they're trying to evaluate when you get a 10-day weather forecast. So they're taking their information and they're taking selectively different models and saying, okay, what model would what would predict the weather in 10 days? So what does this model say? And this model goes through what it would predict, what it's going to predict for what's going to happen Friday. Considering the weather patterns, upper air movement, where we are right now, what the temperature is, how that's liable to affect things. So they have a bunch of different weather models to try to choose between which one they thought would be the most accurate for the next 10-day forecast. Sometimes they hit it, sometimes they don't. But it's a model. It's a structure that's been created with certain variables. It doesn't include everything. The model simplifies. So it takes chief things that they think would be indicative of certain of weather patterns, of what would go on to create one thing or another. So the model, any model, it doesn't say what kind of model, but any model. If you wanted a generic answer to what any model was, this would work to correlate and explain and possibly predict scientific data. It could be dealing with the weather, it could be dealing with creation, it could be dealing with evolution, it could be dealing with anything. So this is the generic answer, but it was from the book. Comparing models of evolution and special creation, what conclusion would one be working toward? Well, it says, which faith is a more reasonable faith? And that was both these, creation and evolution, creation, just creation in general, and evolution are both faith statements. When people say, well, I believe in science and you believe in, you got this religion you have faith in. Well, their science goes back to a point, and then they're taking a leap of faith to believe it happened the way, because they weren't here, nobody was here that saw it took place. And unfortunately for evolutionists, they haven't found convincing proof, evidential proof, fossils, that indicate there was a change from one species to another. If you ever, I don't know if anybody has been to the Museum of Natural History in Washington, D.C. Anybody been to that one? Have you? My sweet wife and I went there, and they had the skeletal systems of birds, and just the variation in bone structure for wings, for ones that were divers that would plunge into the water to get something, and ones that were skimmers. It just the difference in the bone structure of it was just. I mean, I still can picture that today, and it's been probably 15 years ago, I saw that. It was so incredible that they differed so widely. And if you look at, you know, the opportunities you have to see things that people put together, just the design of wings, all that goes into feathers, all that goes into create a feather. And to imagine that that would just happen by chance. No, unguided, it's not designed for anything. How it would have happened in creation, undirected change and mutation. To mutate and change something that's as complex as a feather alone, how it's into the animal and the muscular structure to incorporate on the bone structure, to incorporate that to fly. The idea of, well, you know, you had reptiles and then they emerged into birds. Ooh. I have a great cartoon. It was the creator of Dilbert. Anybody look at Dilbert cartoon?
No.
Right, no. It's pretty funny. But, well, I'll show it to you next time. I didn't bring it with me.
I've seen it before.
But there's some funny stuff. Anyway, so comparing which way, we're talking about faith here. And this is just hypothesis, theory, and law as illustrated by the article and by the textbook's glossary, what our textbook says. Now, according to the article, a hypothesis is a statement that can be tested scientifically by some kind of experiment that could refute it if it was wrong. That's a hypothesis. So a lot of things that are believed and are said as theory, the theory of evolution, well, you've got to have some hypotheses that would be in gear to structure that, and they're just not there. And the textbook says a tentative explanation that is tested to determine whether it is valid. Well, that's what hypothesis is. A theory, the text says, a well-tested and widely accepted view that explains certain observable facts. This widely accepted is, I'd have to go back to see, I should have, when that was included. Because there are enough books you can find that are, you know, go back far enough to see where they changed the definition of theory to include this widely accepted, because that would be the foundation of evolutionary belief, is it's widely accepted. Not that it's tested, because you can't test it. You can't test creation, you can't test evolution, you can't test that stuff. So he says, a hypothesis that has been repeatedly tested in various ways, but has not yet been refuted. Well, if you can't test it, you can't get here. If you can't test it, it doesn't, but arguing that there's no such thing as a hypothesis or it's not a real theory, I think in arguing that with somebody that believes, that's saying the theory of evolution, you could argue that, well, it really doesn't match what a theory is. You can go there, but it's not profitable. Arguing just so you're right is not what we need to be doing. What you want to do is engage the person in thinking about this stuff, not getting sidetracked on arguing whether it's a real theory or whether it isn't. This widely accepted, that opens a door for anything. Widely accepted, well, we'd have to believe what the Chinese, I mean, they have the bulk of the population in this world. They're more Chinese than anybody else. So are they right? Because what they might believe is widely accepted? Well, no, that's silly. So two main scientific reasons. What two does the article give for refuting the idea that evolution is not a proven fact? It's never been observed, and there's no scientific way to test its validity. I'm telling you now, this will appear before your eyes again. It's already appeared twice. and been implied more than that. And I've showed it to you. You've written it down. I'm telling it to you. You're going to see this again. Just say, can a model be proved or disproved? No. A model can't. You can find a model that more generally is an accurate predictor of something. But you can't prove that the model is true. You just model. You're not taking all the variables. You're just taking a couple of them. I mean, I could take two people at this school, just two. I take somebody tall and somebody short. And I could get an average of their height and say the average height of the students in the school. And if I just measure two people, if it was statistically done, it'd throw it out. There wasn't enough, you didn't have enough, broad enough sample. If I did everybody, it would still be an average, because some people are tall and some people are not. And so to get an average, you've got to look behind just the data. It can be statistically significant, but not accurate in what it presents. Anyway, so a model can't be proved or disproved. How is uniformitarianism defined in the article? The assumption that the present processes, what's going on now, operating as they do now, are sufficient to explain all geological and other features of the earth. Now that might be undergoing some modification since that was written. Our book says the concept that the process that we have that shaped the earth in the geological past are essentially the same as those operating today. You could construe that to include floods. We will talk about a fellow that, no, I'll do that later because I have a lecture on it later. Anyway, this is the operating premise of an evolutionary perspective, an evolutionary worldview, and it's called uniformitarianism. You probably need to know what that is. So it's an assumption, and it is assumption, that what was happening now, today, happened in the past. So when we look at the past, we look at through glasses that say, okay, this happened, like the Grand Canyon were carved out by the Colorado River. It just carved it out over time, over millions of years. And I don't know, I grew up in the Northwest, so when Mount St. Helens went off, I wasn't there, I was here. Well, I wasn't here, I was at Virginia Tech. And, well, no, I was in Williamsburg. So anyway, but it happened a while back. So I've been out there. And I've seen, in fact, the worst camping trip I ever had in my whole life as a Boy Scout, and we went out a lot. I had a great scoutmaster. He took us out hiking all the time. But in this thing, it was the only time my dad ever went. Crossing a stream, it was pouring rain. Crossing the stream, I fell in. I fell in with my sleeping bag, on my back. So my sleeping bag was wet. I was soaking. It was raining. It was miserable. It was in Spirit Lake, which they focus on in a couple of things you'll read or see if you talk about the eruption of Mount St. Helens, because Spirit Lake is a lake now that's full of trees that were just hewn down when the volcano took the top of it off. And so you have this mass of floating trees. So it's a different place than it was where I went. But the idea, as a result of that eruption, they have a little stream now that's flowing in a canyon that was cut through solid rock in a matter of hours by a mass of steam and mud that blew out of that volcano. Cut through solid rock in a matter of hours. That if you didn't know that and you were just hiking through and you say, oh, this little stream carved through this rock over millions of years, because you can see the layering in the rock. So it must have cut that. Well, it didn't. It happened catastrophically. So because of things like Mount St. Helens, where you see a catastrophic event and what it left and what it indicates, so when you look at Grand Canyon and you look at other places that historically they've said this was millions of years over, well, you have a comparison that says, well, no, it wouldn't have had to have been. You can't say, well, it could never happen. But you can say, well, this happened like this, and we have an example of this. The same thing could have happened here. And there are other illustrations of that we'll get into later. Okay, how does special creation and evolution, how does special creation evolution issue differ from the catastrophism, uniformitarianism issue? So, creation and evolution is one scientific question. The fact of, is it creation or is it evolution? Which of these are facts? That's one question. The time of creation evolution is another scientific question. How long, when was it? When did this thing take place? How long have we been around? So, the fact of this or this happening and the time of that, there are two different questions involved with this thing. So, and at the end, on page 15 of this article, what are the scientific unsupportable assumptions found in the quote by Dr. Mayer on page 15 of this article? So he said, every knowing person agrees, that's a gross assumption, that man is descended from the apes, that's another one. This is the fact of evolution, and later the basic fact of evolution. It's not a fact, it's not a fact. It's an assumption. The only arguments now are over technical problems. That's not true. And no scientist worries about it, the basic fact of evolution anymore. Those are all sweeping generalizations. Sometimes that's the only thing people have gotten out of this class. No sweeping generalizations. I don't want you to do that. So let me take you a little bit. So the guy that said this, who is this guy? German-born, 1905, American to make decisive and groundbreaking contributions to avian taxonomy, so the study of birds. Evolution and population genetics as well. Widely credited as the world's greatest evolutionary biologist in history. Mayer was fondly called the Darwin of the 20th century. He acquired his doctorate in ornithology, the scientific study of birds, from the University of Berlin in 26, when only 21. So he got his doctorate at 21. He published his famous book, Systematics and the Origin of Species, in 42, which heavily contributed to the population genetics and the evolutionary synthesis theory, which relies on a combination of gene mutations, variation, heredity, natural selection, and isolation. In 53, he became professor of zoology at Harvard, retiring in 79 as professor emeritus. During his lifetime, he named some 25 new bird species and 410 subspecies. He died in Bedford, Massachusetts. So this guy, pretty big guns in the scientific community. But that doesn't qualify all of his assumptions. He's made assumptions in these things. His studies are founded on assumptions. And if you and I, or anybody else, was to study creation, we would study it on the basis of certain assumptions. I believe the Bible is true. I believe God breathed the worlds into their place. I believe he did it in the order that he says he did. Somebody can differ with me. This fellow certainly would. To say that I'm smarter than he, no. I could be wiser. But as far as intelligence goes, this guy, he's certainly widely respected. But wearing a white coat in a lab and being applauded as by one's peers does not mean that what he espouses is accurate or true. You will find that as we progress in this class. Just because I've tried to find a lab coat, I haven't been able to find one. If I had one, I would wear it in here. But, just because I had one on, doesn't make me a scientist. Just because some scientist wants to talk about climate change and they're a zoologist. Well, what credibility do they have in talking? Well, they're wearing a white coat, they're a scientist. For goodness sakes. I mean, people say all kinds of things, but just because they're well respected by their peers doesn't mean that their assumptions are accurate. And that's why you want to find out what people are assuming, what they plant they're building on. You need to be careful about doing that. So, scientists are as human as the rest of us, and as such have their cultural worldview biases. So I had this guy, I had a red flag on here, but I don't know where it went. Anyway, that's a scientist right there. So, oh, I clicked that over. So, what I wanted, as I said, what I wanted in this particular evaluation, and you're going to do another reading, this one is the one that I just went over, was chapter 1 of this thing, of the Modern Creation Trilogy, Scientific Case for Creation. You're going to go to another chapter, and that is the questions are thought of in the same way, unless I'm asking you to think for yourself about this. What do you think about it? If you're just looking in the textbook to find an answer, then that's what I want, a textbook answer. I want you to dig it out. I'm going to show that short video. Surprised, so I thought everybody had seen it. So I've done this. When he goes over things, this Louis Giglio, I have checked out everything he made a joke about it, but I'd already done it. I mean, I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical about creationists. I don't want to be critical, but I just want to be sure that what they're positing. And some of the things that he's using as time, distances, if you look, you'll find you can choose. Just like if I was saying, well, there are 100 billion stars in our galaxy, and that's the lower end. The higher end is 400 billion. So I could say a number anywhere between those and be within a range. So some things that he's saying, we're talking ranges. I mean, they're talking so long. But I went through. So if you want to look at some of the references he made, when I was doing my work, I made a list of things. So this is I have it online. I think you can access it if you want to. Wherever. Okay. So I talked about the Whirlpool Galaxy. He mentions that first. Then he goes into the Sun, Betelgeuse. He talks about that star, Lucifer, Canis Major, Big Dog Star. And then I'm not going through all of the rest of this, I'm just covering this part of it. But if the Earth was the size of a golf ball, he talks about this, and he compares a golf ball, the size of the Earth, to these other things. And the contrast is pretty dynamic. But if you're interested, you can get this. I have this. If I don't have it already in the lesson, it's accessible. I'll make sure I have it there. But this is just what I did, just to, because when you talk about 5.88 trillion miles, what does that mean? It's big. It's big. I mean, he makes a joke about it. Well, I do. I fool around with numbers in math, but that stuff is just big. So we're going to do this. And this is 20 minutes. And I think it's interesting enough.
We call on this, I think you knew this already, the How Great Is Our God tour. Not just because God has given Chris this phenomenal song that circled the globe, but we're calling it the How Great Is Our God tour because we are here tonight worshiping a God that is far beyond anything we could ever dream of or imagine. We are here tonight to worship a huge, massive God of grace and glory. If there's anything that can happen tonight, our heart is that we will leave tonight with at least a couple of things having happened to us. One being that our view of God will be completely blown up all over again, and that the view that we have of God will be expanded in this place tonight, and that we will leave here with the confidence that He is able to hold on to us and hold us together no matter what circumstances come our way in this lifetime. And if you were with us on the Indescribable tour, we sort of took a swing at that first part, looking at the bigness of God and the greatness of the universe. Anybody make it out to the Indescribable tour, by the way? A few of you guys were there. The story of it in a nutshell was that the heavens are telling the glory of God. Their expanse declares the work of His hands. In other words, all you have to do is look up and you see the size of the God that we're worshiping tonight. We ended that, just a little review, with this galaxy right here, the Whirlpool Galaxy. You're like, man alive, we're talking about astronomy at a Christian worship service. Why not? The God that we're worshiping tonight is the one who created that right there. It's called the darling of astronomy. The reason why is it's sitting completely perpendicular to us on Earth. And when we look up at it, we get this beautiful view. But check this out. The Whirlpool Galaxy is 31 million light years away from where you're sitting right now. Okay, they got nothing in here tonight. 31 million light years away. That's just the first little thing we got to catch up with tonight. By the way, the story opens like this. In case you forgot, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and He said, let there be light, and there was light. And that was a phenomenal moment when that happened, because light came out of the mouth of God traveling 186,000 miles a second. That's how fast light is traveling through the universe. And so a light year, therefore, is how far light travels in 1 year, and I'll do the math for you. It's 5.88 trillion miles is a light year. So, as we talked about before, when you start to get around in the neighborhood of God, the mile is not going to help you. The yardstick, the ruler, the tape measure, these things are of no value in the universe that God has made. We're using a ruler called a light year that's 5.88 trillion miles long. And if you'd like to go to the Whirlpool Galaxy, be my guest. All you have to do is multiply 31 million, that's how many light years it is away, by 5.88 trillion miles, and that's the distance that you've got to cover. Anybody with me so far? I'm wondering, are there any science lovers here tonight? Because we're going to have a little scientific content tonight. I need to know if anybody's going to be with me so far. So you do the math. Or you can look at it a different way. You just have to travel 186,000 miles a second for 31 million years, and voila, you will arrive at the Whirlpool Galaxy. Second thing that's pretty stunning, given that our God made that, is it contains 300 billion stars. In that one galaxy, 300 billion stars. And it is one of hundreds of billions of other galaxies in the known universe that God has made. And it just reminds us all over again tonight. And this God that we're singing to tonight, He's enormous. He's bigger than anything we've ever dreamed of. He's bigger than our wildest imagination of Him. But we ended by looking inside that thing, and this is pretty stunning. Those of you who've seen it remember, but the Hubble Space Telescope is circling the Earth at 360 miles above the Earth, and it takes amazing images of these galaxies and other phenomena of the cosmos, and it looked into that white core of the Whirlpool Galaxy, and lo and behold, there is a black hole in there. And we'd never seen it before until Hubble could take an image of it. And I found this on NASA's site, hubblesite.org. This is what Hubble sent back to us from 31 million light years away from the black hole core of the Whirlpool Galaxy. They sent us back this image right here, and it's just crazy. It's crazy. It's the glory of God, the grandeur of God, it's the grace of God and the mercy of God everywhere we look. It's the imprint of God in all of creation, everywhere we turn. And tonight we just want to begin with the bigness of God, the grandeur of God all over again. We're going to do it by looking at 4 stars. Can you handle 4 stars tonight? The first one's easy because there's just one star in our solar system, and that star is called the Sun, thank you very much. Yes, it's our own star. It's there's an image of it for you, by the way. It's a little more fierce than we often think. It's 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit on the surface, but what I want you to see about it is how big it is. It's 93 million miles away, so when you're looking up in the sky, it's pretty good pace out there. By the way, light traveling 186,000 miles a second. It's only taken 8 minutes to cover that 93 million mile journey to touch your skin here in Atlanta, Georgia. But what I want you to see is the size of it. It's like 1,000,000 times the size of the earth, and that matters to us tonight when you hear what the psalmist said. Listen to his words. By the word of the Lord, this is Psalm 33, the heavens were made. In other words, God didn't lift a finger when he made the universe. By the word of the Lord, the heavens were made. But he goes on to say, their starry hosts by the breath of his mouth. So we're looking at something so intense that we don't want to get any closer than 93 million miles away, which is what we are right now. And then we read that God just breathes out stars. It's crazy to think about it. 1,000,000 times the size of the earth. So here's a little perspective that sort of changed my life. If the earth were the size of a golf ball, okay, the sun would be 15 feet in diameter. Okay, that didn't seem to move anybody either, so let me try it a different way. Let me just try it just a different way. I thought I might need this, so I brought a golf ball, okay? So all through the evening, this is going to represent Earth, all right? So this is where we are. I need everybody in the building to look as closely as you can and find yourself, okay? And when you found yourself, I want you to nod your head so that I know you've located you on the earth, okay? You nodding your head? Okay, you found yourself. If the earth were a golf ball, the sun would be 15 feet in diameter. That's not 15 feet diameter. Can we blow that up just a hair and maybe give them 15 feet diameter? So here's a little perspective for you, okay? Is this working for anybody? Here we are on the earth, and that's the sun. It's so big. It's so big, you could put 960,000 Earths inside the sun. So if the Earth were a golf ball and the sun were 15 feet in diameter, you could put 960,000 golf balls inside that 15-foot diameter sun. That's enough golf balls, by the way, because I know that seems like a big number, to fill a school bus with golf balls could fit inside the 15-foot diameter sun. It's a massive star, and it's one of hundreds of billions of stars in the Milky Way galaxy, our cul-de-sac in the neighborhood called the cosmos that God has made. It's huge, and we're worshiping a star-breathing God tonight. But I want to tell you about the second star, okay? Because the second star absolutely wrecked my life. I heard about it when I was a high school student here in Atlanta. One of our youth leaders did a talk, and he mentioned this star. I didn't know how to talk to God for about 2 months after I heard about this star. It's called Betelgeuse or Betelgeuse. You can pick your pronunciation. I'm obviously going with Betelgeuse. And Betelgeuse is incredible. Here it is in the night sky. I know it doesn't look incredibly ferocious, but it's 427 light years away. So that's 427 times 5.88 trillion miles away from us right now. Draw it in a little closer with the Hubble Space Telescope, and you can start to get a little bit of the feeling of its intensity. But this is the crazy thing about Betelgeuse. Are you ready for this? Betelgeuse is twice the size. Are you ready? You think I'm going to say twice the size of the sun? Oh no, it's twice the size of the Earth's orbit around the sun, Betelgeuse is. It's crazy. If the Earth were a golf ball, Betelgeuse would be the height of 6 Empire State Buildings on top of each other. Now come on, have you seen the Empire State Building? I mean, maybe what you're going to need to do is gather the family, get a golf ball, get some plane tickets, and fly up to New York. And you're going to go into Midtown, you're going to take your golf ball and put it on the sidewalk outside the Empire State Building. Don't worry about people thinking you're crazy. They're not even going to notice you in New York. You're going to go across the street, you're going to look up at the Empire State Building and imagine 5 more Empire State Buildings on top of the Empire State Building. That's Betelgeuse, and that's the Earth, and somewhere you're on it. You could fit 262 trillion Earths inside Betelgeuse. So if the Earth were a golf ball, that would be enough golf balls to fill up the Superdome with golf balls. 3,000 times. When I heard that as a teenager, that stumped me right there. Because most of my praying had been advising God, correcting God, suggesting things to God, drawing diagrams for God, reviewing things with God, counseling God. The third star, can you go a little bit bigger with me? The third star is called Musifi. Here it is in the night sky. It's that gold star to the top left. We have the big image of it. It's 3,000 light years away, but I just want you to see it in the span of all these little glittering stars so that you know that at times when you look up at night, it is not just twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. I'm telling you what you are. What you are is intense and huge and massive and ferocious is what you are. And this one used to be called Herschel's Garnet Star. Check it out. If the Earth were a golf ball, Musifi would be the width of 2 Golden Gate bridges end to end. Apparently you're going to need to go from New York to the West Coast. Go to San Francisco with your family and your golf ball. Place your golf ball at the beginning of the Golden Gate Bridge. Go across the bay into Oakland to a high place where you can see the entire Golden Gate Bridge. Another second Golden Gate Bridge will be in your imagination. Span all the way back the 2 Golden Gate Bridges to the very beginning and find your golf ball over there. That's the Earth, and somewhere you're on it. One of the stars in the Milky Way galaxy. It's so big you could fit 2.7 quadrillion Earths inside this one star. Thank you so much. Where have you been all night? Now, quadrillion we have not talked about, and I need to explain this just briefly, because I don't know about you, but I do not understand the national debt, or any numbers bigger than about $875.28. I get that number. Go bigger than that, I don't know. But you need to understand a quadrillion, okay? Because this star is crazy big. A quadrillion, let's do it this way. Everybody knows a million, right? How many know what a million is? You can kind of get your head around a million. Everybody? All right. You know that a billion's 1,000 million, and a trillion is 1,000 billion, and a quadrillion is 1,000 trillion, right? Everybody knew that? Here's the perspective. This changed my life, right? A million seconds ago, 12 days ago. Isn't that cool? See, that saves you doing that on your little calculator at home, which I dare you to try to do when you get home tonight. But a billion seconds ago? You're thinking, oh my goodness, if it's 12 days ago, I'm going all the way back to like September with you, Louis. This must be crazy, right? How about May 1975 is a billion seconds ago? You're like, whoa, that's a little bit bigger than a million. Oh yeah. A trillion seconds ago, you're like, I'm on the 1800s. No. Christopher Columbus? No. 29,700 BC is a trillion seconds ago. A quadrillion seconds ago, 30,800,000 years ago is a quadrillion seconds ago. We're talking about a really large number, and Musifi is so big, you could put 2.7 quadrillion Earths inside this one star. But it is not even the biggest star we have found. I love science, and science has just brought us the largest star they found. It's called, are you ready for this? Canis Majoris. Now, I'm no linguist, but that's a cool name for the biggest star we've found so far. I think that means the big dog star, and that's exactly what it is. I bring it to you as a little bitty purple, glow just to the right of center there. But Canis Majoris, oh wow, if the Earth were a golf ball, Canis Majoris would be the height of Mount Everest. Thank you. You just saved your family plane fare from California to Kathmandu, Nepal. Almost 6 miles above sea level, the highest point on the planet, and I just dare you to get up there and unzip the parka and pull out your golf ball. You could fit 7 quadrillion Earths inside Canis Majoris. That's enough Earths, if the Earth were a golf ball, to cover the entire state of Texas in golf balls 22 inches deep. see the one you're on? Maybe this will help a little bit more. This absolutely blew my mind. Just a little journey through our solar system. Everyone knows our planets and sort of how we fit in to the story here. You see really quickly that we're not even the biggest deal in our own solar system, but as Earth comes by, you have to know tonight that we are living on a privileged planet. Anyone would tell you we're living at one of the most special places, if not the most special place in all of creation. But Neptune comes by and Saturn and then Jupiter, and you're like, okay, we're not all that big, even in our own little cul-de-sac. Notice the blue dot fading away is not the Earth. That's Neptune. The Earth has gotten too small to see anymore. Sirius comes by. Little plug for satellite radio. Not the biggest star, but the brightest star that we have found so far. Pollux, which we didn't mention. Arcturus. Such a beautifully named one, Regal. But then the one that messed me up. Our third star, Musifi. Musifi's cousin, W. Cephei. You couldn't come up here right now with a Sharpie and make a mark on the screen that would approximate the size of our sun. You couldn't even do it. When you look at these in their relative size, we just have to put a little arrow over there that says, if you could put the sun on here, which you can't, it would go somewhere about here. And can you hang on that for me? And when you see this, I don't know what happens to you, but I'll tell you what happens to me. A shrinking feeling comes over me, and it's not a bad shrinking feeling, it's a good shrinking feeling. Because sin, it has a way of shrinking God down in our minds and puffing us up in our own estimation. But just a glance into the universe that God has made resizes everything in a heartbeat. And you realize tonight we are worshiping an unrivaled, uncontested God of all kind of might and power and glory and awe, there's none like him anywhere in all of creation tonight. We are not here worshiping some little teeny tiny God. We are the teeny tiny ones, you and me. We are small and weak and fragile and frail. We are, you and me tonight, one of 6.5 billion people on this little golf ball sized planet in this massive universe that God has made. But I'll tell you, the miracle of tonight is crazy and crazier to me than the size of any star. Is that though we are but a vapor, you and me, and tiny and frail, we are marked by majesty. And we have been created in the very image of the God who breathes out the stars and put the universe into place. You and I are fashioned and formed and ordained by the God of all creation. We are fearfully and wonderfully made, you and I. We are a miracle. You're a miracle sitting in the building tonight. If I could just remind you, just for a moment, you are somebody incredibly special. Let me just dial back to the beginning, and I know you know this already, but in the very, very beginning, here's how you happened, okay? One cell from your mom found one cell from your dad. Now, there's more involved in that, but that's enough for us right now. And by the way, we should applaud the one cell from your dad, because that one cell did a pretty heroic thing to be the one cell in the story that we're talking about tonight. One cell from your mom met up with one cell from your dad, each one carrying 23 chromosomes. The one from your mom was carrying half of her DNA. The one from your dad was carrying half of his DNA. And those two cells met and merged into one single cell. And when they did, those chromosomes matched, and they began to form together a brand new DNA code. Using 4 characters, 4 nucleotides, they begin to write out what we have now discovered is the 3 billion character description of who you are, written in the language of God. They wrote out your DNA, your human genome of 3 billion characters made up of those 4 simple nucleotides. And when they did, they described who God had ordained you to be. In that one little simple cell. Scientists say if you took the DNA out of that one little cell and stretched it out, that DNA would be 6 feet long. 3 billion characters stretched out to 6 feet long. So amazing that if I were to read your DNA, reading 1 character per second, night and day, it would take me 96 years just to read the description of you. And when they formed together, they wrote out and painted a picture which had never been written before in the history of humankind. And then that cell did the unthinkable. It set out to build that model from one cell. I'm telling you, you are a miracle sitting in this building tonight. And you have come a long, long way. And here you are, this may not be in the family photo album, but here you are at 3 days old. 16 cells of you. You say, what in the world is that? It's a 16-cell human embryo on the tip of a safety pin at incredible magnification. So by now that one cell had turned into 16 cells on its way to making the 75 trillion cells that make up your body tonight. Every one of those 75 trillion cells containing that 6 feet of the 3 billion character DNA code that's you. There's so much DNA in your body, by the way. If you stretched it all end to end, there'd be enough DNA to go to the moon and back inside your body. 178,000 times. That's how amazing God has made you to be. 75 trillion cells in your body. And when I told you that, 50,000 of those cells died and were replaced by brand new cells when I told you that.
Isn't that cool? It's obviously, they're another. He's about 1 billion folks short in number of people, but in the world, I'm not sure this was.
Three years.
Well, that's when it was put up, but I think it's older than that. Yeah, I don't know. But anyway, so this class is almost over for me. Let me say a prayer. Heavenly Father, you did, just like he said, you created us. And there's no 2 people that have ever, in the entire existence of this planet, since you created man and woman, there's never been 2 people alike. We're all different. We're all wired different. And you've called us here to serve and follow you. And I pray, Father, in your magnificent creativity, in your glorious, glorious power and love for us, that you would do the work, that you'd help us to let you to do the work in us that would make us vessels of honor, sanctified and meet for the Master's use, that we might be enabled by the Spirit of the living God and the love of God to serve and love you and love one another in a way that will make a difference in the world we live in. And I pray you do that in Jesus'